before you go down this road, evaluate and determine what are the values we are standing for in our home. All right. And it's worth the conversation between you and your spouse to say, okay, what are the bottom lines that we're going to hold in under this roof? Yeah. These are the things that we're going to stand for.
And please do not be reactive, mom and dad. I want you to be proactive. The minute they get out of high school, the minute they turn 18, you have to have this conversation before they come to you with the boyfriend who wants to spend the night, or before they tell you that they want to go get birth control. Like, those are the things, the conversations that you want to have before you find that situation in front of you. And so, you and your spouse have got to decide, what do we stand for? What are our rules going to be? And then communicate them in a calm, respectful, firm way. This is what we do in our home. Now,
Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200. Welcome to Rock Solid Families. This is Merrill Hutchinson, being joined by my lovely wife, Linda. Linda, your hair looks nice.
I just got a haircut.
Wow. All right.
Okay.
There you go. You got all spiced up.
If people are listening and not watching, now they're going to I'm missing it.
Yeah. Well, see, they'll go and they'll watch.
Yeah. Well.
And you might have said that you are happy that people are watching and we don't have smell-o-vision.
You might have changed your shirt.
I had a little workout in, and I changed my shirt, and I kind of, dabbed off to dry. I threw some new deodorant on,
Yeah, great.
And gosh, she says, I'm glad this isn't smell-o-vision.
You're just telling all our secrets today,
There we
aren't you?
go.
Yeah.
There we go. Open book here. You ready for this show?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Are you sure?
I am. But if you're just watching our first part of this is actually part 4 of a series that we originally called The Sex Talk, The Right Talk at the Right Time.
Are you sure you can say that?
Well, we're not writing it, but yeah. But through our marketing team, we were encouraged to change the title because you got canceled.
I am still canceled. I am canceled off of Facebook, and yeah, it looks like there's no way out.
No warning, no reason, no appeal.
Nothing given.
Just deleted.
I'm just out there in the desert. I'm hoping somebody drops me some crumbs.
And we did find out that one of our shows that we did before this series was not picked up because it was about physical intimacy. And we're like, holy cow, we haven't even gotten to the sex series yet. So, yeah. But yes, we are talking about sexuality and our parenting and our families and our children. And today is young adults.
So our title is Christian Birds and the Bees, part 4, the young adult years. So up to this point, we've walked through 3 other parts prior. We talked about really those just newborns up into preschool or before school. Okay. And again, we're not talking about talking sex talk.
You have to listen to part 1.
Yeah. And then in part 2, we're talking about those those elementary years. Okay. And just the type of language and the type of talk that we can start to have there. And then part 3 is really where you might consider more of the type of sex talks where you're talking the teenage years, where you're actually talking a lot more of anatomy and physiology and just structure and function and all those things. And so, today it's young adults, and this is, of the parts, this one is, to me, is very different and weird because of whatever you've done all the years before. So one house might hear what we have to say and go, that would never work. And another house might go, Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That's what we do.
We're talking about Gen Z, and Gen Z really fits the teens to young adults. And the Gen Z has seen such a different perspective of sexuality and gender and just normalization because of the internet, because of Google and YouTube and all the things that you and I did not grow up with. And maybe most of you that are listening did not grow up with. This is the age group that has been so exposed in the sexuality and romance and relationships from movies and TV and social media. And the image of sex has been really significantly altered to what God's intention was, his original design for sex and marriage and all the gender and all those things. So yeah, it's man, they've experienced something very different than you and I did.
Yeah. And hon, if there was nothing to intentionally offer another option of what their vision looks like, then the vision that they've been given is the one they think is right, is true. Yeah. And it's like, well, this is what everybody does, right? And so part of what we are talking about, today is okay, what do we do if we find ourselves in that position with our young adults? But also, what could we do on the earlier side of that, the preventative side? So there's kind of a twofold thing there.
And also, I'm holding up, if you're listening and not watching, I'm holding up my phone because the students, the kids that we're talking about, the adults that we're talking about have grown up with a phone. And so they don't really know anything different than being attached 24/7 and really talking and texting more than they really face-to-face communication. And so I believe our young adults have really lost a lot of really skill building on how to relate, how to connect, how to communicate. And so part of that translates in how the relationships go, especially romantic ones.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Let's say thank you first to our sponsors. Okay. Let's thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Maxwell Construction for, again, continuing to support the work we do here at Rock Solid Families. So please, if you are doing any business with them in the Cincinnati tri-state area, let them know by saying thank you, that you appreciate their willingness to sponsor these kinds of messages. And, without them and without other businesses like them who kind of believe in the importance of community and family and faith, it would be even harder to do what we're doing.
So we knew this before you got canceled on Facebook, but we know that we are a minority
I think you like saying
message.
I think you like saying
and
that.
we are, I was just telling a parent today, we are swimming upstream in a huge rush culture that is very different. And so our messages are, getting a lot of static and a lot of pushback. And so please, we need your support. Please, if you like what you hear and you agree with this messaging, this Christian perspective, this biblical approach to sexuality and parenting, please share this show. Please rate it. Please give us a 5-star rating. Consider supporting us financially. Your one-time gifts, your reoccurring gifts. You can go to rocksolidfamilies.org and hit the donate button. And that really supports and really encourages us to keep doing these messages and getting this word out for parents and families and young adults.
All right. So we gave a little bit of the background already in terms of the other shows. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some things that it would do us well to at least wrap our head around a little bit prior to us getting more into this conversation. Okay.
Yeah. I want to say something first, hon, because I think that if you are a young adult listening, you have seen a very different model than what you and I have, hon, because these young adults are coming from a family where mom and dad, a lot of them were not even married. They were living together, or maybe the parents weren't even together at all. And so when you grow up with that kind of model, you don't think twice about having sex before marriage and living with a boyfriend or girlfriend. And so, unfortunately, the truth is the worldview that we have today is very secular, very humanism, and not biblical, and honestly, not very healthy, because it really kind of makes it very messy when it comes to what happens when your heart does get broken, or what happens when they choose somebody else, or what happens when you get pregnant and you're not married or you're not even together. And so this real free sex kind of attitude has really taken its toll.
Yeah. So the point would be, prior to you listening to the rest of this show, it is a worthy exercise to try to back up a bit and say, how much has my view of sex been tempered by the worldview? Okay. And so you mentioned a lot of those things. And so really all of us, I don't care whether you call yourself Christian or not, all of us have had a tempering by the worldview. We watch TV shows that have sex scenes in them. We hear certain languages. And we'd be lying to you if sometimes we didn't see things and have an interest in them, or we hear a comment and we don't laugh about it, but we know that it's not of God's word. Okay. So it is important that you don't act holier than thou and recognize, okay, I've been tempered by this, or maybe the right word might be desensitized by it. Yeah. Okay. And that helps you just understand how you've gotten into the messaging that you might be delivering to your kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what your young adults are fighting against. You and I, hon, have been in the school and church world for 35 years each. And we've seen the devastation that comes from affairs, divorce, pornography, STDs, we just swinging. I mean, I have seen it and heard it all when it comes to clients coming in.
Okay. So the idea here, guys, is when we talk about us being desensitized or tempered by the way of the world, one thing before you go and start talking to your young adults is do a little bit of study, and this is what Linda and I have done, okay? Do a little study on actually what the true outcomes of the worldview has produced. It's not like, if you went back 60 years ago, you might be able to say, well, I don't know, it seems like a good idea. But it was very early in the experimental phases in many of these different ways that we've chosen. And so now we are at a place, and this is actually something that I picked up very strongly out of the elementary school years when I was counseling at the elementary. I would have definitely been much more just sort of neutral on a lot of these stances. But it wasn't until I was counseling at the elementary school where I had these eureka aha moments of, oh my gosh, this is what happens when parents divorce, to the kids that were a wreck that were coming in our building that I was responsible for. This is what happens when a husband leaves his wife or a wife leaves his husband. This is what happens in terms of the fallout. So it's a really important thing to stop just buying that, well, we can just live together because it's better to test it out. Well, actually take some time and study the actual outcomes, guys, because what we're going to tell you is, because we've done that study, if you study the actual outcomes of like couples living together, premarital sex, extramarital sex, if you actually study what the actual outcomes are, they're not good. Okay, they're not good. Now, you might find an exception and try to argue that. Well, I know somebody who's done that, but we're saying that the general rule is the outcomes are not good when we go outside of God's way.
So we don't know who's listening to this and what your circumstances are. And there's different scenarios that lead to different responses. For instance, maybe you have a young adult who is out of high school and they are living under your roof. And so let's talk about that one first, hon. So they are, let's say they got a job or maybe they're going to college and they're living at home. And so what is our responsibility as parents? And I think, hon, what you're trying to say is, please don't just throw your hands up and say, well, they're going to do it anyway, or, I can't do anything about it, because Merle's trying to help you understand that it's worth the conversation and holding firm to what is a value that you want in your home.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing to do, hon, is enforce a value that you don't even know if you believe in.
Yes. Yeah.
And so from the get-go, before you come at your young adults, children with all this gusto of how you're going to show them, you better be convicted on your own value system that you're trying to hold up. Because if you had a huge reputation of raising your kids with a different value system, maybe you were living with somebody, maybe you did things that, and now you're preaching to them. Yeah. We're not saying to not go. Sometimes you should still preach, but you better evaluate those things first, because before you go down this road, evaluate and determine what are the values we are standing for in our home. All right. And it's worth the conversation between you and your spouse to say, okay, what are the bottom lines that we're going to hold in under this roof? Yeah. These are the things that we're going to stand for.
And please do not be reactive, mom and dad. I want you to be proactive. The minute they get out of high school, the minute they turn 18, you have to have this conversation before they come to you with the boyfriend and wants to spend the night, or before they tell you that they want to go get birth control. Like, those are the things, the conversations that you want to have before you find that situation in front of you. And so, you and your spouse have got to decide, what do we stand for? What are our rules going to be? And then communicate them in a calm, respectful, firm way. This is what we do in our home. Now, they're over 18, they're in college, or they have their own job. And if they don't like those rules, here's what you have to understand, mom and dad, that it's okay. It's okay that they don't like your rules, but the rule is that in our home, this is what we do. And if you don't like it, then you're welcome to go find an apartment or, rent somewhere else but this is what we do. And please don't apologize for it. You don't have to preach at them or beat them over the head, but make sure that you stand firm on what you believe.
Yeah, that's the conviction, right? And that's just the good, strong leadership. You're not judging them to heaven or hell. What you're saying is you're upholding values, okay? And someday they will actually thank you for that, because if and when this relationship that they may go into produces a child, they're going to be in the same boat, okay? And so you will probably get a thank you, but it might be farther down the road.
Yeah. So unsolicited advice is taken as criticism. So unsolicited advice to an adult child is wrong, and it's not going to be taken well. And so please don't give advice unless they ask you for it. If they say, Mom, what should I do? So-and-so is pressuring me to sleep with him or move in with him, then they're asking for your opinion. But otherwise, we've got to kind of step back, and hopefully we have built on those other parts of the series that we did. And if you haven't, go back and listen to them, because that's what's going to be the foundation of the conversation you have next.
Yeah. And, you're even if they think they're adults, when I was 22, 23, I thought I was a full-blown adult. And, but you don't know what you don't know. And so if you've tried to, when advice could be given, but you've held by your values, and your young adult children make a mistake, okay, or they do something that goes outside of the values that you were trying to protect, with freedom comes responsibility. Okay. So, they had a freedom of choice, but here's where we get sticky and how we handle it. We still want to rescue them. Yeah. Because maybe they do get pregnant. Maybe they fall on hard times and they don't have the money. And so our heart goes out farther than our head. And so we really have to know in advance what we're going to do. And it really does help to make these statements even before, like, hey, you need to know that if you ever get pregnant, that child will be your responsibility. I mean, not that we will never offer a hand, but you're going to be the parent of that child. We are going to be the grandparent of that child. And so with freedom comes responsibility. And so when things don't go well, or there is kind of a misstep, then please, they have to own that responsibility.
Again, they're adults, and like Merle said, with freedom comes responsibility. But if you're still paying their way, and you're still making their car payment and their insurance payment and their phone bill and all that stuff, and then they don't show up for weeks because they're sleeping over their boyfriend's house, or, they're not telling you where they are and they're not coming home at night, like, you're going to have to set a boundary there and say, that's not okay. And I understand you're 18 or 19 years old, but I'm still paying all your bills. You're living here rent free. You're under our roof. And so again, go get your own apartment. So if that's the choice, you're living with your boyfriend or something like that. So encourage them and support them in making their own decisions and being responsible, as Merle said, also for the consequences. Do not rescue them and save them.
And I think this is a great time, because when things like that do happen, all of a sudden emotions rise, people feel like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible situation, and we want to help people, right? But again, this is a time to go back to how you create your value system. And when your kid is questioning you, and when you find yourself questioning yourself, like, oh my gosh, maybe I should do something different, go back and see how well what you're doing runs against God's word. Okay. And so the idea that you are trying to hold this rule, this value because you said so, you are even going to question it. But if you can run it against, like, God's word endorses what I'm doing here. And so it's a great reminder to us. I mean, Linda and I have had to do this with our own kids, because there's times where we're like, man, some days our kids get us when we're feeling a little easy, and some days we're more strict. But the idea here is, okay, wait, what's God's word want us to do here? And again, there's grace peppered in there, but there's truth. So when you're in doubt, seek some good counsel, but also take it to God's word.
So the topic of gender confusion is one that we get a lot in our office. We'll have parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles come in, and they ask, like, what should I do? How should I respond? Should I weigh in? How do I love my child when I don't agree with their decisions? And that goes for the same for a same-sex relationship as well as a heterosexual one. Let's say they're living together, right? And so what you want to do, especially if they're, for instance, maybe they started at age 16 and they wanted to transition into a male into a female or female into male, and they wanted hormone replacement and all that kind of stuff. And you were like, well, they're going to do it anyway. And so you just go pay for it, or maybe you pay for them to have some kind of sex change or whatever. When they are 15, 16, 17 years old, you have a responsibility to lead well. They are still a child. You are still the parent. Now, when they turn 18 and 19 years old and they're saying to you, this is what I want, you are going to have to step back, and they can do it without your help. And if they want to pay for it, but please, mom and dad, you're allowed to have an opinion about this. You're allowed to stand firm on that. We're not going to pay for it. We're not going to allow that in our home. And so if they, in love, say, we love you, but we cannot confirm, or we cannot condone or encourage this decision. And so we're going to step out. And I think that shows them, okay, I want you to respect my decision, but then you have to respect vice versa, in other words.
Right. Well, and I know what you meant on some of this, but I just want to draw the clarity. You said when they're 18, they'll get to do their own. As you said earlier, if they're under your roof, and I don't care what age they are, okay? If they're under your roof.
Or your insurance.
Yes, and you're responsible in that way, then you have a significant say. If they go against what you're saying, okay, then again, this is not a threat. This is why you want the best you can. You want to front load these things. You want to say, hey, you need to know, like, if you make that choice to do that, maybe you decide to go get hormone replacement therapy or to do that, then you're going to be on your own to do that. And so it will be time for you to look for an apartment, find your own way. And again, every possibility to have them know what they're going to run into beforehand, okay, is really helpful, because it allows them to do the old risk assessment. Listen, I know if I make this decision under mom and dad's roof, I know where they're going to go with this. Yeah.
And just to be honest, you and I did not grow up in this cancel culture that we're living in today. And basically, if you disagree with me, you're a hater and you're dead to me. And that's a real possibility, mom and dad. And you have to be ready for that. But that doesn't mean you should cave, and that means you should compromise what you value. But I will say this, they may cancel you and reject you. But please, please, mom and dad, just because they get pregnant out of wedlock, or just because they're living with a boyfriend, or just because they choose a same-sex partner, does not mean you have to reject them. Yep. Jesus did not. Jesus ate with tax collectors and Pharisees and lepers, people that were shunned and shamed. And Jesus was not that way with them. He loved them and he treated them with dignity and respect. And so I'm asking you, mom and dad, you may be so upset and so disappointed at your child's decision or consequences of their decisions. But that doesn't say that you can't love them, and that maybe with that love comes an opportunity to speak into their life, to have influence, to model healthy. But if you just say you're dead to me and I reject you, you're just going to push them into the very arms of the people you're trying to keep them away from.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's called, relationship burning. And if you burn a relationship, you will lose the keys of opportunity to ever really weigh in, ever probably, I mean, depending on how bad it is. And so we always want to try to keep the relationship. But as you said, they might burn the relationship because they might be so taken personally what you've done or said, but that will be then on them. And what I'll tell you is they mature, they'll grow. Life will teach them. I mean, we've all had more than our share of humble pie over life, and it makes you realize, wow, my parents were a lot smarter than I gave them credit for back in those days. And so again, it may get ugly for a while, but stand to your convictions. All right. But as you said, hon, don't burn the relationship, still love on them and say, hey, I don't, Jesus said, go and sin no more. Okay. But he didn't cast a stone on them. He said, go and sin no more. I'm going to free you of that.
Yeah. So we're just saying, as our young adults, to summarize, unsolicited advice is taken as criticism. And so do not give your advice, preach them, lecture to them unless they come to you and ask. Okay. And it is all possible, as much as it's in your control. Try to keep the lines of communication open and healthy and just respectful so that they will come to you, hopefully when they need you, but not to pay your bills, but to have a relationship and to feel that love and support for them, not because of what they do or don't do, but because of just who Christ has made them and who you love them to be.
All right. You ready to walk through the challenge?
Yes.
Okay. So there's so many different tangents that this whole conversation could go per the household. Okay. And so one thing we would say, even before we get to our challenge, is that you may have definitely heard something that sparks your interest, but maybe you realize that your situation's way different. Okay. And so we definitely say, let's get some help, ask for some help. But here are some things that we just want to challenge you with. Okay.
Yeah.
First off, if you're listening to this show and you're not in this season yet, but you see this season
We've
coming.
Scared the heck out of them now.
So this is a time to really start prepping for that season. Okay. Like, get yourself aligned with your spouse, with God's word, understand the values, and even so we have teenagers, and we've not in a harsh way, but we've even made statements already to them like, hey, you just need to know, like, we were always going to love you, but if you do get pregnant, you're going to be responsible for the baby, and that's not a threat. That's an expectation that they need to start prepping their mind for. Okay. Yeah. So if you're not in that season yet, now's a great time to start prepping.
So if you are in this season, remember, with freedom comes responsibility. It's one of our favorite lines. If your young adult wants to make choices as an adult that you don't agree with, they also need to have the responsibility. So are they still living under your roof? Are you still paying their bills? So make sure that with one comes the other.
Yeah. The next part of the challenge there is, gosh, this is why God is representing truth, but he's also representing grace. And so this is that truth in love kind of thing.
Yes.
And so there is a place for that tough love. I'm going to stand strong with these convictions, but it's the harshness sometimes, that the delivery, that will damage the relationship way more than the actual message. Okay. Yeah. And so you speak the truth in love, you've got their back, but you're not going to do anything that's going to support their decision if it's going against God's word.
Yeah. If they reject you because of your beliefs, that's their decision. Just step back and pray for them and give them space and time. But please, please don't reject them because of their decisions. It's hard to repair when things are said. It's hard to take things back. If you've done your job, they know what you stand for. They know what you believe in. You don't have to lecture them or preach to them. That just drives them further away from the values that you are trying to establish. So please keep those lines open.
Mom and Dad, this is a very much of a microcosm of what our relationship is with God.
Oh gosh, that's so true.
Right. So, I mean, God is doing, whether it's sex or money or everything else, God is dealing with this with each of us. Okay. And so don't get all on your high horse and think that, you're the only one with this. This is God's daily with us. So just be thinking about it through that view.
You know, hon, I love that. I'm so thankful that you mentioned that, because ultimately we want to show Christ's love to our adult children, to our teenagers, to our young elementary and preschool. Like, we want to show the love of Christ. And so is what we're doing that? And are we glorifying him in our decisions or lack of decisions or follow through? So we want to glorify him, but we want to show the love of Christ.
All right. You got anything else?
Oh man, this was a big series, and I know it's an important one because parents are coming to us all the time. So if you have not catched the first part 1, 2, or 3,
did you say catched?
Catch.
You said catch. I was like,
if you've not caught,
we'll say caught.
Catch the first 3, go back and listen, even if you're past the stage, because if you've not built off of the first 3, the season 4 is hard, and vice versa. So please make sure you listen to all 4, because all 4 of these are so important when it comes to parenting and relating to our kids with a topic of sexuality.
Yeah. All right. If we can help you guys, come out to us. You can reach us at 812-576-7625. You can reach us through email by going to our website at rocksolidfamilies.org, and you can communicate that way with us. I would say, hon, that this particular part that we've covered in this season, dealing with sex, this is the most work that we do. When you have those late teens to early adults, and the parents are just in conflict with what they see their kids are doing, and so I would say this, and then of course in the teenage years quickly following behind. But the reason why this is such a big topic that comes into our office is because it comes with a heavy duty expense if it's not done right. Okay,
sure does.
And so. So anyway, we deal with this stuff a lot, and if we can help, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, so please reach out to us at rocksolidfamilies.org, and we want to thank you so much for listening to Rock Solid Family Podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.